Here are the top 5 good and bad things about owning and living with an EV, in my opinion. Let's start with the good. Yeah, so obviously there are no exhaust pipes on an electric vehicle, so there are no emissions being produced immediately from the vehicle. This can be especially good in the cities where we want to keep the pollution and smog down. Now, I don't want to start a massive argument here, but electric vehicles are not completely emissions free. There are no emissions being produced from the vehicle itself. But to make these vehicles, yeah, a lot of emissions are produced, digging for the batteries, the process of getting the materials and turning them into batteries, making the electric motors and still making the rest of the vehicle all produces emissions, unfortunately. So the idea of it being an emissions-free product is not completely true, but having no exhaust pipe on the back, no immediate emissions from the vehicle is a good thing. Number 4. You know what it's like when you're standing here and you're bored out of your brain, filling up with petrol, you turn around and you see a nice $5 combo meal deal. If you're like me, you're on the road all the time, a petrol station can become a second kitchen for you, and meals like that become just too tempting to ignore. Number 3, most electric vehicles have the battery located under the cabin, a bit like a sandwich within the chassis, and then an electric motor is either at the front, at the back, or both, for all-wheel drive. But what that means is excellent packaging inside and cabin space. Because there is no drive shaft or gearbox running through the middle, you've often got quite a bit of storage in the center console. This example is front-wheel drive, and it has quite a good center console set up with lots of storage. And this is a pretty small vehicle, about the size of a Corolla or something, or even smaller actually. But in the back, we've got plenty of legroom thanks to a completely flat floor. Boot space is usually okay, but there is an electric motor under there, so that's a bit bigger than, you know, a differential in a rear-wheel drive. But often electric vehicles have a front boot as well, because there's no motor in the front or no engine in the front, and you've got a little bit of a storage tray in there as well. Not all, but a lot of them have, yeah, extra storage, maybe for the charging cables or even a tub for wet gear like your swimmers or something like that, or a beach towel, just to give you a bit more extra storage over a petrol or diesel model. Number 2. The first time you drive an electric vehicle, you'll be amazed by how quiet and peaceful it is to drive, because there's no engine running. All here is either the air conditioning or the radio, but if you turn everything off, it's just completely silent apart from the wind noise. That's it. And it can be quite calming and luxurious, even on a vehicle like this, which is a bit, you know, it's a bit of a budget model, just a small little hatchback city car. It becomes a bit of a luxury vehicle because it is just so peaceful and quiet. Electric vehicles produce power and torque immediately. It's pretty much down to how quickly you can push the throttle with your foot. No petrol or diesel car can keep up with it in terms of response. And that opens up a new driving style really, because yeah, going up in the mountains and things, you've got instant power right at your foot, and you can adjust the power very precisely with how far you push the throttle. So you can come around a corner, you want 26% throttle. You know you can just push your foot that much and you'll get exactly that. There's no waiting around for engines to rev. Electric vehicles can also be very quick and powerful, as we know, which can be exciting in itself, but that can bring up some other concerns. We've heard about some of the good things about owning and living with an EV. What about the bad? Number 5, and this kind of carries on from the number 1 point of the good part. Yes, I know I'm probably getting a bit old, especially coming from someone that runs Driving Enthusiast and previously Performance Drive, where we do a lot of performance testing and we love performance cars and driving enthusiastically. But I think some of these vehicles are becoming too quickly for the mass market. Take that new MG X-Power for example. Now that vehicle is about 60,000 Australian dollars, which is quite affordable. It's opened to a lot of the market. Now imagine your uncle or auntie or mum and dad going into the MG dealer. There's a good salesman there, like as in he knows how to sell cars. He upsells them to the top of the range model, which happens to be the X-Power. I think that's going to cause some problems in the future because, you know, we've got these people that have never previously, you know, been enthusiastic about driving or cared about cars that much. Suddenly they're driving in a very, very quick car. I think it's a recipe, or it could be a recipe for disaster. Let me just paint you a quick picture. Say your uncle or auntie is driving along and, you know, someone pulls in front of them and they get a bit annoyed. We're all humans, so we get the shits. We floor the throttle. He floors it for 2 seconds. If you're going 60 kilometers an hour in one of those X-Powers and you floor it for 2 seconds, so that's bang, hit the throttle. 1, 2. Suddenly you're going 100 kilometers an hour in what could have been a 60 kilometer an hour zone. They're just extremely quick, and I don't think they should be open to anybody to buy, not without some prior experience anyway. I know it's sounding a bit like I want it to be a nanny state, but I think the driving test in Australia is very basic and it doesn't teach you anything about driver control or vehicle control. I think there should be some sort of prerequisite where you need to pass an advanced driving course before you can buy something like that. And it's not just MG, there are a lot of very quick vehicles out at the moment that are quite affordable. BYD, the maker of this car that I'm sitting on now, this is the Dolphin, but there's a new model coming out called the Seal, which is also very quick and quite affordable. And then of course there's the Tesla Model 3 Performance, which is very quick and also quite affordable. It is a bit more expensive than the two that I just mentioned, but still very attainable to a lot of people. You know, if you buy a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or something like that, you're likely to have some sort of enthusiasm for driving and performance cars in the past. You may have owned a performance car in the past. Not always, but at least with a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, the concentration of those on the road is quite small. Whereas coming out with these new electric vehicles that are very affordable and mass produced, there's going to be a lot of them around. And I think the concentration is going to get much, much higher, certainly higher than a Lamborghini or Ferrari or something like that. So I think the potential for danger has increased. I'd love to know what you think though. I'm getting a bit old, maybe I'm being a bit fussy, but I just think, yeah, it's an area that should be looked into. It seems like it's just being completely ignored. Number 4, electric vehicles are still quite expensive in Australia, and I can't quite figure out why. There are fewer moving parts in an electric vehicle compared with a petrol or diesel vehicle. The technology has already been developed. Battery technology has been around for decades. It's not like it's brand new. And electric motors have been around for a century, I think. They've been over 100 years old. So that's not new either. Obviously they're honing and refining this, but so is that's the case with petrol and diesel engines as well. I just don't understand why there's so much more. So let me give you a couple of examples. The cheapest petrol-powered Hyundai Kona is around $32,000 before on-road costs and all that. And then the cheapest electric Kona, so the same vehicle, same packaging and everything, just with an electric powertrain, is around $60,000. Then you have the MG ZS. The cheapest petrol model is around $23,000, and then the cheapest electric model is about $41,000. It's not just the cheaper end of the market either. The higher end vehicles are usually slapped with even higher prices, so that difference is magnified. Porsches and BMWs and things, although I think the Taycan is a bit cheaper than the equivalent Panamera, but the Panamera sits in a class above the Taycan in terms of the size, according to VFAX anyway. That might be a little bit different, but yeah, some of the other ones, they're just even more expensive than their petrol versions. Number 3, if you're feeling a bit sad and you just want to relax, having no sound in the vehicle is sometimes quite soothing. But on other times when you're pretty happy and pepped up and you might be going to a party or someone's house or something like that, or you're going for a nice spirited drive, having no sound can be boring because there is quite a bit of contrast. You're energetic, or you're driving and you're going along a nice driving road and there's just no sound. It just doesn't quite click with your brain as well as a petrol or diesel model. I know there are companies that are developing systems to try and bring back some of that engagement, such as Hyundai with the new Ioniq 5N, which has an artificial gearbox. You do actually have to push the paddles to progress in speed if you put it into manual mode. So that does help, but yeah, there's just no getting away from the fact that it can be quite boring and it's not as engaging as a petrol or diesel model, in my opinion. Another little annoyance is the fact that you can't usually keep EVs running. So I can't count how many times I've stepped out of the vehicle quickly to get something from the shops or something like that with the wife and kids in the vehicle. Usually I just leave the car running with the aircon on. In electric vehicles, a lot of them, there's no start button. So you just get out and the car completely switches off. This BYD Dolphin actually has a start button and you can actually leave the aircon on, as I've got at the moment. So I'm not in the car's actually on, and the aircon is actually running. I can feel the air coming out there, but normally if you get up off the seat, that's it. The car turns off and the aircon turns off. I know there are some EVs where you can actually keep the aircon running. There is that, but with a petrol or diesel vehicle, I can just run into the shops or the petrol station and pick up a sausage roll combo deal and have my wife and kids in the car, knowing they're going to be cool and comfortable. Number 2. In Australia, the charging infrastructure is too far behind, in my opinion. EVs are becoming more and more popular with more and more models released pretty much every year. There's just not enough charging stations around to support this, in my opinion. The government keeps going on about how it's, you know, all green and wants to support this sort of thing, but it's not doing anything about it, or not doing much about it, in my opinion. Right now, I'm waiting for a charge. In a bit of a remote location. The next nearest charger is about half an hour away. But I've got to wait for this guy to finish in the red car, and then the Hyundai is ready to go after him, and then it will be my turn. So I'd have to sit here for, who knows, maybe an hour, 2 hours, just to get access to that single charger. Overseas, I know they have a lot more chargers. I've been to Germany where there's a car park full of about 20 chargers in a row, whereas in Australia, yeah, that's just that one charger. And literally one plug. It's got one CCS2 plug and a CHAdeMO plug, which is a bit out of date now, so it's kind of almost irrelevant. But just the one in this whole area. It's just ridiculous. So here's another problem we face as well. This guy is actually at 100%, yet his vehicle is still plugged in. There's no one inside, and it's just sitting here with the charger plugged in, and we can't unplug that even though he's on 100%, and no sign of the owner anywhere either. So now we're just standing around waiting for something to finish that already has finished. It's a bit ridiculous. There needs to be some sort of etiquette in place here, or even a policy that, you know, you're not allowed to leave your vehicle, at least, especially when it gets down to, or up to near 100%. We'll actually try and unplug it here. So it's, yeah, definitely on 100%. It's still ticking over, but it's not actually providing any charge. It does unplug, so there we go. We can still use it. If we push stop, or even the emergency stop button, it should reset the whole thing. It's just something that you need to think about. If you're going to buy an EV and you want to do a bit of driving around, you do have to wait for this sort of thing. I remember having an EV once, and I was talking to my friend who lives about 100 kilometers away down the coast, and he said to me that he wanted me to pick up a car part near my house, so that the factory was near my house where this car part was. He's doing up a car. And I was in an electric vehicle doing some videos and things. I said, okay, well, I need to go and get the part, somehow charge the vehicle on the way, and then head down there and make sure that I can get a charge down there to come back home again. It just made it much more inconvenient. It turned, what should have been a 1 or 2 hour exercise into a half day. It took up my whole half the day, because I had to charge the vehicle, go and get the part, then go down there, charge it again to come back home again. It's just, they're not quite there yet in terms of the infrastructure. I think they need to install a lot more of these. There are more and more popping up in petrol stations and so on, but yeah, again, I think they need more of them, not just one. Put 5 or 6 of them in a row. Why not? You've got the gear already there. It just doesn't make sense. And then the number one bad thing about owning an EV is the afterlife. So what happens when these vehicles are 10 or 20 years old? Where are all these batteries going to go? I know China has some battery recycling plants, and that means, you're going to be shipping batteries over to China to recycle them. I don't think they have electric ships yet. I think there's a bit of emissions going to be produced by doing that. And then the process of actually recycling the batteries, is that environmentally friendly? It's still some questions to be answered there. But even if you get into a car accident, in a petrol or diesel vehicle, it'll go to a wreckers usually, or an auction or something like that, but it will end up probably at a wreckers. They're going to pull it apart and then leave it sitting in a yard. They might take out, well, they probably will take out the engine, hold that separately, but that might be sitting around for a while before somebody buys that. Now, what's going to happen with electric vehicles in a car accident? Are they going to go to a wreckers as well and just sit around? Are the wreckers going to try and take out the batteries as well and have them sitting around? I don't want to start open up a new can of worms by talking about fire safety, but I think it's a concern that needs to be addressed. There needs to be proper procedures in place, even for the fire departments, on how to handle electric vehicle fires. The problem with batteries is once they catch fire, they continue to burn even if you try to put them out with water or sand or anything. Because of the chemical makeup, it actually produces its own air or oxygen to keep the fire going, which is, yeah, it can be very dangerous. So what they have in some countries, I know Germany has this, they've got, as a part of their fleet or fire truck fleet, they've got these trucks that have a big tank on the back, like a shipping container full of water. And basically, if there's an EV fire, they pick up the car and just dump it into the pool of water and leave it there for a few days while it just slowly stops burning. But also that catches some of the toxic smoke that is otherwise produced if it's just left on its own. I think there's still a lot to learn for all of us with electric vehicles, the emergency departments and all that sort of thing, before they should be mass produced, in my opinion. I think we need to get on top of some of these other concerns first. There you have it, the top 5 good and bad things about owning and living with an electric vehicle. Have I missed something? Please let me know in the comments, whether it's good or bad. And please, if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.